Hey, everyone. Everyone, take your seats. We're about to get going. The guys who helped salvage this thing, I need you guys in the front somewhere over here because you guys are going to come up at some point. Okay. All right, I understand. Everybody's all settled in? Where's our fearless leader? Deb Whitcraft, where is she? Where is she? Is she marrying somebody? Is that what it is right now? Tom, where you at? Okay. No, you. Zajag's here. Do it this way. Oh, look at this. How short do you want it?
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody. If I could have your attention for a minute or so. I normally have a very big mouth, but it's not a long-winded welcome. Anyway, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the New Jersey Maritime Museum, I want to thank all of you for attending today's commemorative event. We have a wonderful showing, and we appreciate your attendance. We are honored to host this and want to especially thank the members of the diving community for their dedication and their efforts to share their passion and their discoveries with the non-diving public. The diving community, we've been saying this for 14 years. We're now in our 15th year. The diving community is the backbone of this museum, and without the support and the willingness of divers to allow us to showcase their discoveries and share their stories of underwater exploration, much of this history would be lost. The survivors of the Andrea Doria play an important role in the preservation of the story behind this horrific maritime tragedy, and we welcome all who are able to attend this today. Can we have the survivors just raise their hand, please? Wow. We are absolutely honored to have you all here today. Today's event required the efforts of many, many people, and I was going to try to thank everyone who made this possible, but I knew I'd forget a few people, so I said, no, I'm not going to do that. The contributions of everyone, big and small, will be noted and acknowledged following today's event, but we're grateful for the help and appreciate the efforts of everyone. Please feel free to visit the food and beverage tables manned by the Beach Haven Catering Company. Restrooms can be found on both floors of the museum, and a special exhibit of Andrea Doria artifacts can be found in the main room of the museum. Complimentary earplugs for anyone who wants them before the sounding of the foghorn are provided. If you don't have them and you wish to have a set, please let us know and we will make them available to you. We would be remiss, we're a nonprofit maritime museum, we would be remiss if we didn't encourage everyone to consider becoming a member of the New Jersey Maritime Museum. We operate solely on donations and memberships, and we look forward to fulfilling our mission to preserve our maritime history for many years to come. Again, welcome to everybody.
So, welcome everyone. Deb, thank you for those kind words. Welcome everyone for being here live with us, and also for people who are watching from all over the world. This event would not be possible without Deb Whipcraft and Jim and Bob. They are our hosts, and this museum is really a home to all of us, not just divers, survivors, and also anybody who wants to check out the maritime history of this area and, you know, other areas maybe a little further north off of Long Island and a little bit south, perhaps off of Delaware. This event is courtesy of Deb and everyone else here at the museum and the museum, free of admission fees. So please, 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 make some donations if you can. There are some donation boxes around. There's also a link on the museum website with which you can make a donation. So don't hesitate, because the funding for this event all came out of the pocket of this museum. Nobody else put any money into it. Now, obviously, there are people who donated certain equipment and other things, but that pales in comparison to how much money Deb had to lay out for this event. So please don't hesitate to donate. I do want to thank our live stream host. That's Backscatter Underwater Video and Photo. Backscatter provides constant support for our team by providing the highest quality underwater video and photo equipment. I know they're watching from Monterey, California. Thank you, Becca Boring. Thank you, Berkeley White and their Backscatter team for making it possible to bring people from around the world together for this event. And a big hello from New Jersey. I also want to thank the Surflight Theater. It's a local theater here on LBI. They provided the audio and the visual equipment for all of us to enjoy here today. This event would not have been possible without one very special person who had to put up with a lot of personalities, and that's my girlfriend, Jen Saliti. She's behind the scenes. She was behind the scenes getting everything together, all those little programs that you see. The organization of this was due to her dogged determination to pull off a great event. So without her, we wouldn't be here today. Now, this next individual who's going to speak doesn't need an introduction. That's Bill Miller, a.k.a. Mr. Ocean Liner. Mr. Miller is basically an international authority on ocean liners. He's done about 450 voyages on many ships. He's written over 100 books, right, Bill? And he's written about 1,000 articles about ocean liners. So anything you need to know about an ocean liner that was afloat in the past or is afloat now, he's the authority. So I'm super happy to welcome him up to the stage. Bill, I don't think you need much more of an introduction than this.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, John, for all your good work, and the divers. I had a friend who, in 1956, on July 26th, worked in the shipping offices in Manhattan, and he knew people at the Italian line, and he said, I think I'm going to go over and volunteer to help them and answer phones because the Andrea Doria had sunk that morning. And while he was there in the office, he looked out the window overlooking Battery Park and the Hudson River, and the Stockholm came up the river with no bow, and everybody in the office was stone quiet, and somebody said, the death ship has arrived. She was the villain in the collision with the Andrea Doria. In 1989, I was in Genoa, Italy, in a hotel, and I saw an Italian newspaper, and I asked the man to translate, and it said, when it comes to Italy, the Italians bought the old Stockholm and we're going to make it an Italian cruise ship. In 2001, I was on a cruise in the Caribbean on the Valtour Prima. Rebuilt, beautiful, modern, you couldn't tell. And as I pulled next to it, the bow, you could see the name, Stockholm. It used to be the Stockholm, and now it was an Italian cruise ship. And today, 75 years later, the Stockholm is the oldest cruise ship in the world, laid up because of COVID, but it's still afloat. In the 1930s, Italy had over 20 ocean liners, but at the end of World War II, they only had 4. The Saturnia, the Vulcania, Conte Grande, Conte Biancomano. So at the late 1940s, Italy said, we have to rebuild. We have to get some new ships. We have to start getting ships to America. And so with Marshall Plan money, they loaned it to Italy from the United States, and they built 2 ultra-beautiful liners, the Andrea Doria and the Cristoforo Colombo. And the Italians were proud. The ship was commissioned in 1952, 5 swimming pools, fully air-conditioned in 1952. Today, we take it for granted. That was unique. All the first and second class cabins had their own private bathrooms, and no cabin had more than 4 bunks. The ship was a tour de force, the best Italian artist, everything about it, and on the outside, it was considered one of the most beautiful ships afloat. And when it got to New York for the first time, in January 1953, fireboats, tugs came out to welcome it into New York. But the buzz on the waterfront, that yes, it was a beautiful ship, but the dockers had heard it was a fragile ship. It wasn't, well, how shall we say, not unseaworthy, but it was a little fragile. And you know, like janitors in the factories, they know the truth. They know the soup. So anyway, that lived on. But nonetheless, the Andrea Doria was so safe that it was the first ship to meet the latest safety standards. They were even saying the ship is unsinkable. Well, you know what, the only other ship they called unsinkable? The Titanic. Well, it's not the best word to use for a ship. Anyhow, on that fateful voyage in July 1956, she was on her way to New York with a full load of passengers wanting to be on time. And of course, as fate would have it, not only another ship, another liner, the only time that's ever happened in history, 2 ocean liners collided together in the middle of the ocean. And of course, the Andrea Doria was mortally wounded and sank, and so forth. And I want to make it a point to say that at the time of the sinking, there were all sorts of rumors and theories. For example, there was a theory that they wanted to run it aground on the beach at Nantucket and save it. Not possible. Another was to attach chains and drag it up from the bottom of the ocean. Not possible. And the wildest dream at the time was to fill the ship with ping pong balls and float it. It would rise up. Would never happen. But nonetheless, the Andrea Doria remains a famous, immortal ship. And it's fascinating that we're going to have the whistle and we're connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. That was really nice of you, and thank you for coming again. For all you divers, and if there are some historians here, everybody has to know John Moyer. So when John is not moonlighting as a badass biker, he's the guardian of the Andrea Doria, not just in its physical state, but he's also the guardian of the Andrea Doria in its emotional and what's the best word to describe it? And it's an ideological state. John was granted the Admiralty arrest on the Andrea Doria in 1993. And there's a video inside where you see him with a little PVC tube. He's about to go down to the wreck and attach it to the wreck. So it's a cool video. You can watch it during the intermission. And the court named him salver in possession. So he owns the wreck along with, more recently, Tom Packer and Steve Gatto, which, all the three of them basically are the guardians of this wreck. Now, he spearheaded the expedition to recover some of the Gamboni panels that were in the Winter Garden on the wreck. Each of them weighs about, 1,000 pounds? They recovered 2, correct? And the video about that is inside as well. John is a member of the Atlantic Wreck Divers group, a very famous and basically world-renowned wreck diving group here in the Northeast. And he's the recipient of the prestigious Pioneer of Northeast Diving Award. I want to welcome John up to the microphone, and he'll take from here.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. For people watching online, thank you for watching. Joe, thanks for that awesome introduction. And I don't know if I've ever said this, but awesome job bringing up the horn and restoring it. And you've been a big help to me maintaining the Admiralty arrest over the years. So A+ for that.
And it's not just me. This doesn't happen without a boat full of people that go out every summer to the Andrea Doria. This is a thank you to all of us. Thank you.
Yep. So, it's a pleasure being here today. I'm here with my fellow Atlantic wreck divers. Great to see all you guys. It's a pleasure to be with actual Andrea Doria survivors. So I want everybody to have a lot of fun today, but at the same time, we have to remember today's a solemn occasion and a big day for the survivors, a day that I'm sure changed their lives. At this time of day, 65 years ago, they didn't know what was going to be happening that night. So we have to take that into consideration and remember the survivors. And today should be a day full of dignity for them. Purette Simpson, very dear friend of mine who has done more for the Andrea Doria recently than anybody else that I know. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here. I know she's watching online. So she's asked me to introduce her. So I have a written introduction that I'm going to read. Purette has done so much for this ship, it's impossible to list it all. So I'm just going to give you a summary of what Purette has done. So, and now, I want to honor a key survivor, Purette Simpson, who unfortunately could not attend this event. She sends her deep regrets, but is honored to join us on our program today via audio and visual. It would not be an overstatement to say that this event would not have survivors and their families present to commemorate the 65th anniversary of the Andrea Doria tragedy without Purette's efforts for the last 17 years. As the gatekeeper of survivors and their stories, she has kept in touch with many and invited them to participate in various events, including this one. Her perseverance to keep the Andrea Doria legacy alive led to the publication of 2 books, Alive on the Andrea Doria, The Greatest Sea Rescue in History, and the novel, I Was Shipwrecked on the Andrea Doria. Pierrette's books thoroughly address the cause of the collision and technical aspects of the sinking. She learned naval architecture in English and Italian and worked closely with naval architects and marine forensic experts and engineers in 2 countries. As a result, Pierrette became the first shipwreck survivor in history to challenge and disprove the accepted historical record. Pierrette's goal of vindicating Captain Calamai has also been achieved with her award-winning docufilm, Andrea Doria, Are the Passengers Saved? It's being aired today on CUN TV as well as tomorrow. So check the CUN TV website for times and listings. Deservingly, Pierrette has received many awards and recognitions for her work from the state of Michigan and from her Italian community and region. In January 2017, the Italian Ministry for Cultural Heritage chose to endorse a feature film story based on Pierrette's contribution to her country due to its national, and cultural value. Pierrette's next goal is to have her works realized into a feature film. With her determination, it'll surely happen, hopefully by having somebody hear this message today. We are grateful to Pierrette Simpson for her perseverance of keeping survivors united, contributing historical works for humanity, and most of all, for keeping the Andrea Doria legacy alive. For all of this, she is deserving our recognition and that of the Italian government. So, Pierrette has spent years trying to gain her Italian citizenship, lost through naturalization. Now, let's all applaud the merit of Pierrette's work in an effort to be heard across the Atlantic, the ocean where her family heirlooms were lost and her life's purpose was discovered. So let's give a round to Pierrette.
My journey on the Andrea Doria was unique in that at the age of 9, I was immigrating with my grandparents to Detroit, Michigan, where I would meet my mother. I did not know her because she had immigrated when I was only 15 months old, and therefore my grandparents had adopted me. On July 24th, I looked forward to just one more day before meeting my new family my mother had established. Although I had always resisted being transplanted from our farming village in the Piemonte at the foot of the Alps, I was excited to travel on water. My grandmother, who had always been paranoid of water, did quite well on the voyage and even let me swim in the third-class swimming pool with my new friends Pat and Arlene Mastrincola and 3-year-old Norma DeSandro. On the last night on board, Nonna and I decided to celebrate in the social hall where we danced to lively music. Nonno insisted on tucking in early in his cabin at the lower level of the ship, along with his briefcase that he carried with him. It was 11:10 p.m. As we danced and sang, I suddenly felt an abrupt, huge jolt accompanied by a thunderous noise. Our fluid ocean liner was hurled into the air on its right side, shaking terribly as it inclined to the left side. It then settled back to center, but did not remain there. We were then tossed like small statues to the extremely inclined right side. When the shaking relented, we could hear screams from many injured around us. We did not know it, but the gigantic hole created by the MS Stockholm's jagged bow allowed tons of water to enter and began the ship's descent to the Atlantic floor. We knew we were in great danger, even on the unsinkable Andrea Doria. "Oh Dio, aiutaci! God help us!" cried out Nonna as we held one another tightly. Lights flickered on and off, and finally we heard a shaky voice on the crackly, damaged loudspeaker trying to reassure us by yelling, "Calmi! State calmi!" Calm was not to be had for a while, at least not until we realized we had to resign to our perilous predicament and pray to the Virgin Mary while sitting on the floor, hanging on to one another. The words, "now and at the hour of our death," took on an intensified meaning. I now quote from my book, Alive on the Andrea Doria. Those who were on the outer deck witnessed startling fireworks created by grinding steel, sparked by an unidentified vessel slamming into our hull at full speed. They watched in horror as the perpetrator tried to withdraw from the hole it had created, slicing through the thick walls of steel that had once protected passengers from the dangers of the ocean. In the social hall, these gruesome theatrics were magnified by the crashing of hundreds of bottles that landed on the barroom floor, as if thrown there by the devil's rage. Every fiber in our spines reacted to the scraping, screeching, and crunching noises from an unidentifiable source. To my great relief, my Nono came through the social hall door. I had never seen him this scared. His blue eyes were glossed over in panic, his pants rolled up to his knees, exposing bare feet, and his hands clasped his briefcase against his chest. The three of us ran toward one another, desperately seeking strength and comfort. "Pedring, what's happening?" Nonna asked. "I don't know. There's water in the corridors and the smell of smoke. It was hard to find the stairs. There was an awful smelling oil on them. I kept slipping with everyone pushing and trying to get past me to reach the deck." My Nono had arrived without his life jacket, but felt obliged to help the other men who were boldly pushing heavy objects from the lower side to the higher side of the list, attempting in vain to balance the ship. Nonna and I gripped one another even harder. With each episode of loud creaking noises, followed by a sudden plunging of the floor bent on descending to some lower depth, a cacophony of mysterious sounds echoed all around us, blasts, bangs, crashes, and other dreadful noises. To make things even worse, the air reeked of hideous fumes, as if concocted by a sorcerers of the deep. At first, people became hysterical. "We're going under! We're sinking! We're drowning! It's like Titanic!" End of quote. I wonder, what is sinking, drowning, Titanic? I thought, I want to return to Pranzalito and my friends. After surrendering to our tragic fate, we were astonished by the words of a man who appeared through the social hall doors yelling, "The rescue ships have arrived! They're sending lifeboats! We need to abandon ship now!" With hopeful hearts, we crawled from our precarious shelter, the social hall, and realized that survival was a possibility if we could reach the lifeboats. As we made a human chain by holding hands and leaning against the guardrail, we finally reached the lowest part of the incline, which was by now nearly 40 degrees. There, 2 men tied a rope around my waist and dangled me in the dark along the hull into the lifeboat that was hidden under the incline. I cried as I had never felt such fear. But would my Nonna and Nonna be lowered also? Suddenly, I spotted Nonna descending on another rope, all by herself, clutching her purse. One leg landed in the water. She screamed as she was pulled in by a sailor from our rescue ship, Ile-de-France. Then I watched my Nonno make his way down another rope, hat on his head, barefoot, and I believe he was hanging on with one hand as the other grasped his precious briefcase. We safely made our way to the Ile-de-France on a long ride from hell. People vomiting, crying, and lamenting strange things like, "I left my teeth on the nightstand." We were surrounded by soggy floating suitcases, beams, furniture, until we reached the gigantic French liner. I panicked as I realized I would have to climb a narrow Jacob's ladder along the ocean skyscraper. The passengers on the Ile-de-France were most gracious, offering us clothing, food, even their cabins. After disembarking, we walked to a large hall where we were greeted by my new stepfather, Lino, and my great-aunt Teresa. After insisting on eating a colorful, curious food called Jello, instead of something that would fill my empty stomach, we headed for the airport and flew to Detroit. There, I met my mother, and I hugged her tightly. Looking at the photos taken by our neighbor, a professional photographer, I am amazed that I could relate to this stranger called Mama. Later, she wrote in her diary, I quote, "It was the longest day of my life. Words alone cannot convey the tortured moments, the memories, the guilt, despair, hopelessness, and helplessness. I felt as if I had set in motion the avalanche of mistakes that perhaps would bury you all. Finally, the good news came. The telegram from the Ile-de-France read, Tutti salvi. I knew you were saved. We went to the airport to wait for you. You can see from the pictures that I am still in my house dress. Could not pull myself together. You were here with me, finally."
Okay, so now you have a little bit of a better idea what an amazing person Pierrette is and what she lived through and what she's done with her life. We're going to be showing a short version of her film in part 2 of today's events. So, as Deb said, we have some special guests here. We have the survivors from the sinking. I'd like each one, when I read your name, to stand up and let the crowd know who you are. So first on my list is a good friend of mine, Ada DeFabio. Ada. Ada and I met at the 40th anniversary of the sinking, which with Bill Miller and I at the South Street Seaport in New York City. 25 years ago. Went by fast, didn't it? Okay. Alda Remengia. Alda could not be here in person, but she's watching on live stream. So we want to say a big hello to her. Another friend of mine who I met not too long ago, Lucy Remengia, her Alda's daughter. Alda was pregnant with Lucy at the time of the sinking, so that makes Lucy one of the youngest Andrea Doria survivors. Lucy. I've done many events with Lucy, including riding up Fifth Avenue in New York City in the Columbus Day Parade with 1 million people watching us. It was an amazing day. Peter Porporino, our other young survivor. I just met Peter this morning. His mother, pictured in this photo, was pregnant with him at the time of the collision. Bruna Capalbo. Peter's older brother and sister were young children at the time. Bruna is the little girl pictured in the photo. Bruna. Did Joe Porporino make it? Oh, okay, great. Awesome. He's also here with us, and he's pictured in the photo as well. We spoke on the phone a couple times, Joe. Nice to meet you. And Joe will be speaking in part 2. He has a little story to tell. Corrado Sagona. Corrado, my buddy. We also rode in the Columbus Day Parade. And as we were riding up Fifth Avenue, Corrado was telling me about his experiences that night on the ship. That was incredible. Dante Gallerani. I practiced that before, but I don't think I got it right. John Giovanni DeCipio. Tony Lombardi. Tony cannot be with us, but he's watching on Livestream, so we want to acknowledge him and say hello. And finally, a gentleman who I have not met before, Pietro Riggi. Thank you for coming.
John, thank you very much. And thank you for all the survivors and survivors' family who are with us here today and watching on this live stream. These events, not just for the Andrea Doria. Obviously, the Andrea Doria is a very significant event, but survivors and families of survivors of any shipwreck, it's always amazing to have a discussion with them about what they went through or what their family members went through, and that's the intersection of where us wreck divers like to be and where we like to live. So it's not about just collecting artifacts. Restoring artifacts, but it's about the stories that survivors and families of survivors tell us that make those artifacts meaningful. And again, thank you, John, for everything you've done for the wreck, and we as young wreck divers really, really appreciate that. So I didn't have the privilege to dive with John on the wreck. I came afterwards along with my friends. Some of the guys who dived with John in the past are here with us today, and thankfully they're still diving. They tell us stories about what it was like back then. But working on this project with some of the younger guys and some of the seasoned veterans is what made this project really, really special. So this is our boat, and this is basically the platform from which we do all this fun stuff. This boat here did not look like this. This picture was taken last year in Montauk. This is where we leave from to dive wrecks like the Andrea Doria. This boat looks like this now due to the efforts and the vision of a guy that's sitting in this audience here today. Joel Garcia, where are you at? Stand up. You see that guy right there? That guy's got more blood in this boat's hull and her decks and her windows and anything that has to do with her than anybody else. Without him, we wouldn't have a boat like this to dive off of. Thank you, Joel. And thank you, Debbie. He's not retired yet. She's sitting next to him. So, 2016 is the year that we found the horn. Tom Zajac and I were diving together, and we were basically exploring the area of the debris near the Winter Garden and forward towards the smokestack, and that's when we found it. And that year was the 60th anniversary year. In fact, the trip that we found it on was the July 24th, July 25th trip, which was very near to the, close in time to the, basically an exact time was to the 60th anniversary. And on that day, there was a very famous boat out there, run by our very famous captain who's here today, Nicky Caruso. There he is. Nicky are basically the only two captains taking our boats out there in the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years, maybe 8 years. A lot of the boats that dived the Doria back in the day stopped diving it in the 2000s, and then we kind of picked it up in around 2009, 2010. And Nicky's been going there more often since then. And as you can see here, there's a picture of Bart Malone. He's dearly missed. He's not here with us today. He was on Nicky's boat on that trip. I think that was his last Doria trip. And he was with Nicky on the old Salty. Nicky's fishing for dinner. The Andrea Doria. Every time I see this picture, I just think to myself, what a beautiful sight. And indeed, she was. Whether you looked at her bluff bow or you looked at her stern, you looked at her sideways, she's absolutely gorgeous. Now, the area that we were working is, I don't know if you can see the square, it's pretty faint. So that's the area there that we were tied into on the port side up high. And we dropped down to the seabed, tied off a line, and our mission was to basically explore the edges of the debris. I mean, the import of the mission, or the goal of the mission, was to see if we can find remnants of the bridge, because a lot of the bridge equipment has yet to be recovered from the Andrea Doria. There's also a builder's plaque that's there, but if anybody finds that, that belongs to John Moyer, so don't get any ideas. So we tied off a line on the starboard side bits. I don't know if you can see them, but I'll point. They're basically right forward of the curvature of the Winter Garden. And if you can see the animation of the dots, that animation basically takes you to the approximate area of where the horn was located. However, in that year, in 2016, we went much farther than that. We actually traveled to the smokestack, and which is still in relatively good condition, but that's a subject for another lecture on a different day. And here you see where the horn was mounted. High up on the mast, right below the crow's nest, and above the crow's nest there's the radar. And you could see in the photo that's a close-up, the two ladders on either side of it. Those ladders will prove to be an impediment when we were trying to salvage this artifact. So here's some pictures of, I guess, the salvage in progression. Initially, the horn was tucked in under the mast and under the ladders. You can see I'm pointing my finger at the trumpet. It's really camouflage. It was quite difficult to make out until you basically were on top of it and you're thinking, what is this big round thing that's staring me in the face? Here's another photo. This is after an attack by Bam Bam and his sidekick, Bam Bam Jr. They're sitting right here in the front row. And another one, as you can see, the part that's shiny, the bronze end, is caught under the ladder. And when Tom Zajac and I went down after Bam Bam and Andrew were finished with their dive, the plan was, okay, we're going to just deflate the lift bag. The lift bag is basically the thing that carries the item to the surface. We're going to deflate the lift bag, and we're going to be able to swing the end that's caught under the ladder rung out, and then everything is easy from there. So I go up to the top of the lift bag, and I'm like, this thing has no dump on it. Like, I can't dump it anywhere. It didn't have a traditional dump valve on it, and I'm like, well, I guess we got to do the next best thing. Now, the next best thing I did in 2000. I was diving with Bill Cleary on his first depth charge 1, and we were diving the wreck of the Winnacone, which is a Black Sunday wreck about 50 miles east of here. And it was a helm stand that was caught under a big scallop dredge. So the idea was to lift the scallop dredge just enough with a 2,000-pound lift bag so we can access the helm stand that's underneath it. So we did that. We sent down a 2,000-pound lift bag. It was just 3 of us on the boat that day. Bill, my friend Gene Holmes, and myself. So we pivoted the scallop dredge up, and we tried to tug at the helm stand. It was a heavy brass object, and it just wouldn't budge. It wouldn't budge because the shaft was still attached to it, and it was buried in the sand. So Bill comes on the boat. He's like, this is not happening. Please be careful. Don't do anything stupid. I'm like, don't worry, Bill. Don't worry. No stupid acts will be conducted here. So Gene and I go down, and I'm like, okay, so we need the lift from the 2,000-pound bag to yank this thing out of the sand. So I took a line from the bag and tied it to the helm stand, and then I cut the line that was attached to the scallop dredge, and then the rest was history. The 2,000 pounds of lift yanked the helm stand and the shaft out of the sand, and it was like a missile coming up out of the water when Bill was laying on the bow watching to see what's going to happen. So 17 years later, we had to do the same thing. We had to use the same method to basically yank the part that was pinned underneath that rung out from underneath. And here's what happens when you do that. You really can't see anything, but you can tell from from what we're saying. We did live. We're all here. And after some very nervous moments, the horn was hoisted onto the boat, and as you can see, the bracket was still with it, and that's the same bracket that you see here today underneath the trumpet. That's original. It's just powder coated the same color as the piece that was fabricated. An impressive piece, if I might add, when we saw it underwater. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Nikki. It was a score that day. It wasn't just a horn. We all did very well. And all of these artifacts that you see have been restored by members of the team. We don't just take stuff to take it. Some of them you'll see in museums like this one. And the guys here from left to right, Andrew Nagel, Mike Dudas, myself, Tom Packer, Rick Simon, Steve Gatto, and Tom Zajac. Now, once you get an artifact, the real work begins. And if it's an artifact this complex, it's not just, oh yeah, let me just take it home and shine it up. Because if you just shine it up, eventually the salt is going to leach out of the shined up artifact, and it's just going to look a mess a year after you shine it up. So you have to soak it in water and always change that water over time. This horn soaked for about 2 years. And the trumpet is not made out of bronze. It's made out of tooling iron, an iron that was patented or called meionite. So it's hard iron. It's cast, obviously, so thankfully it didn't break when the mast fell and things fell on top of it. Tom Packer recently recovered the trumpet from the Bow Mariner, and unfortunately, because it was cast iron, that had been hit by a dragger or somebody, and it shattered it. So that was the tub that it soaked in for a couple years. Now, what you see here on the screen are the two whistles or horns that the Andrea Doria was equipped with. The one on the bottom is the one you see here restored today. The one on top weighs about 1,500 pounds. The reason it weighs that much is because it makes its own steam. That is a steam horn, if you will, or a steam whistle. And that is basically lodged in the smokestack. So it's still there. It's sitting in the smokestack, but it weighs a ton. The bottom one, which is the one here, is one driven by air, and it doesn't make its own air. You have to supply it with air, just like we will be doing here in a bit. And that one weighs approximately 235 pounds, or 107 kilograms. And that was sent to me by John the day after we got back from shore saying, hey, we found the Foghorn. He has a book that contains all this information. So it's a model Super Typhon siren. It's TA 150-125. It's manufactured in Malmö, Sweden. The company is still in business today. Today it's called Commeoration. They do a lot of other things other than horns. They build ships, actually. But back then it was called Kokum Sonics. It's about 4 feet long. And I already discussed the weight and what the trumpet's made out of. Now, the parts that you see, some of them were bronze, some of them were stainless. Everything is original except a couple of nuts and bolts that I wanted to basically use that would shine up much better than the steel that was on there. So this is how it looked when it was here. I had taken all of it apart, photographed it, and make sure that I cataloged everything I needed to catalog. I gave it a quick sandblast, and then we sent it to Commeoration in Sweden, and this is it on their table in Sweden right before they were starting to work on it shortly after it arrived there. If you ever need to send something to Sweden, just make sure that you pack it really, really well. This salvage or the restoration effort in Sweden was headed by Emma Hansen and Martin Moritz. Those two were instrumental, and they were so excited about working on this particular project. They had in the past restored the horn to the Queen Mary, and I know Emma is watching the live stream today with her dad. Emma, a big shout out to you from New Jersey. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Every time we talked to Emma on the phone or on Zoom, she was always excited. She was always excited because things were going well. And one morning, I think we got up very early and we saw a message from Emma, and it was super excited. And I figured something good happened. This is the white trumpet you see in the picture is not this particular trumpet. I wasn't going to send a 200-pound trumpet to Sweden. It was just, although it probably would have tuned the sounding mechanism better to it. It's just that I thought that would have been fraught with disaster. So we just sent the working ends. And that white trumpet is very similar to this one that they had, or I think they borrowed from someone to test the horn, the working ends after restoration. So they had to make some flanges to hook it up to this particular trumpet. Here's a little video from Emma.
Hi, Jen and Joe. Here are the housing from Andrea Doria.
So
here is the new bell piece.
So they have this spectacular sound room that has all kinds of foam
and then
in
the
it,
flange
and everything
for
is the foam is engineered.
That's where we will mount the manual release later, hopefully. And now we will roll it into our sound lab.
The sound lab
like
is engineered to basically tune these fine whistles or horns that these people made. So it was a cool little video that she sent us, and obviously she did send one when they tested it, but you'll hear the real thing. Now this guy, he's a Frenchman, and he's a terrific iron worker. He made the circular mast base, if you will. Thank you, Harold Moyers. Where's Harold? Where is he? Oh, there he is. He's bald still. Thank you, Harold, for introducing me to Eric. Eric has made many things in the last 6 months for me, and every time I show up with something, it's heavier and heavier and heavier. And he's like, you got to give me a break. My back. So he makes spectacular ironworks. He makes rails. He makes all kinds of stuff. And he's done quite a bit of stuff for us in an effort to restore other artifacts that we have. This is the base being made. It's the round part is made out of 3/8 steel, so it's rolled. And then the flats are cut and it's welded. And then the way we got the diameter for that is basically we took it to an engineer, and an engineer basically said, hey, you've got here's the diameter it needs to be. Scott Ciardi, where are you at? Scott Ciardi polishes our collective artifacts. Without Scott, you don't see that high polish shine on the horn or the hundreds of other artifacts that he's polished for us. He also complains about the weight of artifacts we take to him. Right, Tom? And last but not least, that beautiful black walnut base that you see under the mast base was made by Treetop Crafters. Christine and Nathan, they're here. Thank you so much for being involved in the restoration of this project. Aqua Environment is the company that donated the regulator that takes 4,000 PSI of air and turns it into 100 PSI. So we want to thank them as well. They're not here with us today. And then here's basically the salvage and restoration team. Eric had to jump on a plane to fly to see his dad in Paris. So I'm going to now call up the salvage team one by one. Guys, Andrew Nagel, come on up. Michael Dudas. Tom Packer. Yeah, Tom gets the applaud. I mean, he just dances up here, you know. Steve Gatto. Yeah, old timers. We have to applaud them. Rick Simon. Tom Zajac. I think you guys might want to go that way. Well, yeah. The restoration team. Where is he? Scotty, come on up. Christine and Nate from Treetop Crafters, come on up. I would go here. I would go there. Go to that side. So, when this horn hit the deck, I think I must have said it several times on the boat, that on the 65th, we're going to sound this piece of equipment. Listen, this thing is loud. So I just want to warn you, if you have earplugs and if you want to use them, please go ahead. Take a minute or two. It's your choice, obviously, but I'm telling you now, it's got a 9-mile range.
So you're saying we'll hear it?
Did you want to set? Did you want to set your thing up?
Yeah, I guess we're doing it.
I'm gonna swing the camera over to it. I don't know why, but you know,
Go ahead.
We'll be able to hear after I hear the area. That's the important.
I only have one good ear,
Or,
so I probably should protect that one. Probably. So if I'm ever talking, I keep turning my head this way. It means I don't really want to hear you.
I'm sorry, what?
Exactly.
It's just when you're gonna get the cord like wrapped around your ankle and like walk away a trip and it's gonna get jammed on.
Did Harold hear you? Harold said that.
So, the last time this horn sounded was on July 25th, 1956, exactly 65 years ago today. On that day, it was sounding an alarm or a sound of danger, not a sound of joy or departure from a port or anything happy. Tom Zajac was instrumental in this project. Him and I found this piece of equipment together. He's been integral in the ideas process of how to restore it. He was integral in helping me get it out of the mess that it was in, along with everybody else that worked on it. I mean, I looked at the videos. Everybody here that's standing here helped salvage this piece of equipment. Without Mike and Andrew, Tom and I would not have been able to be in a position to yank this thing out. What we do, and I can't stress this enough, cannot be done by one person alone. It's impossible. You can't run a boat by yourself. You can't recover artifacts by yourself. It's about teamwork, and that's what it's all about. And I'm very, very thankful to have friends like these guys and people who are not here, people who are in the audience, who I can share this with. So in the maritime tradition, usually, at least when I've heard whistles or horns sound, usually it's 3 blows, a short one, a medium one, and a long one. And those usually are kind of happy soundings or happy blows. And that's what we're going to do here today, folks, because we are celebrating today. We're celebrating being together. We're celebrating the survivors.
My name is Art Kirshner.
I know who you are, Artie.
I was there when we got the bell.
I know.
Can I come up there?
Of course you can.
All right, Artie.
So, please.
I go many times.
I know you have. I know all about your stories. I read all about you all the time.
Oh, really?
That's right. So today, as I was indicating, we are celebrating, so the horn's going to sound 3 times. Whenever you're ready, Tom.
Let me lean on Wow. Tommy.
All right, folks. Enjoy the drinks. If there's any more food, enjoy the food. We're going to take a brief break. And thank you so much for everything.
We're not going to do it again. I told him, I'm like, shut it off. If there's something bad. Somebody shuts it off by accident. Oh, that's